Hello class, welcome back to online learning session 7. This is the second week of the 6th cycle. We're going to be continuing talking about bony fish today, and let's get straight to the topics for today. We're going to start with talking about orange roughies, covering fish anatomy after that, fish mouths and tails, hermaphrodites, salmon life cycles, and some announcements. And finally, if we have some time, we're going to talk a little bit about butterfly fish. If we don't get to it, that's completely fine. So let's get right into it. Today we're going to be warming up with this little guy right here. This is a orange roughie, and we haven't really known about orange roughie for very long, maybe about 44 to 45 years. It's a very deep water fish. It's found about 800 to 1300 kilometers below the surface. It's got this reddish body, it's got a large bony head and large eyes, and the reason now it's a big deal, or we're talking about it, is that it's begun to be commercially fished using bottom trawling. And there's a lot of topics that we're going to be covering in terms of why it's important. So bottom trawling is this new technology that was discovered that lots of fish below deep within the ocean could be caught using this way of fishing, which basically attaches weights and then to a net, and it basically scrapes on the surface of the floor of the ocean, deep below the ocean, and it fishes for these types of fish. What it did was it started reducing the numbers, and the reasons for that is that they're very slow maturing fish, so they can grow up to be 150 years old. So they can grow to be very old, but it also takes them 30 years to mature so that they can reproduce. So it takes a while for them to get to that point, and when they do get to that point, there are maybe years where they don't reproduce, so they could have on and off years where they produce. So it's not every year that they're reproducing, and so it was really important that fisheries began to monitor their reproduction cycles and basically put caps on a lot of the fishing that was taking place, because numbers began to go down. And so they found orange roughies as old as 230 when biologists take out the otoliths, which are basically ear bones, and that's how they kind of date these fish to be that old. So a lot of the fish or orange roughies that people eat might be older than individuals' grandparents. And here on this graphic you can see orange roughies have basically been on the decline, and that's really the takeaway from this one. Since they were discovered, they've basically been on the decline, and fisheries are going to have to do a good job about monitoring them. So now let's get into fish anatomy. We're going to quickly run through this because we're going to talk about this a little more next week. So just a quick intro. First thing is a swim bladder. We spoke about that last week, and that helps with buoyancy. The nerve cord is going to send all the signals. That's maybe where you're going to get signals from the lateral line telling the fish where there's movement within the water. The dorsal fins help it maneuver. The ureter excretes. Caudal fin propels it. The urinary bladder holds whatever it's excreting. The anal fin, the cloaca, is involved with the gonads in reproduction. Intestine is moving everything it eats out. The pelvic fin helps with maneuvering and stability. The stomach churns everything up. The liver below that. The heart, gills, pharynx, nostril, eye socket, brain, and kidney. All right, next we're going to get into talking about mouths. So we're going to kind of discuss the terminal, superior, and inferior mouths. And just notice that the terminal mouth is at the very end of this fish head. The superior one is a little bit more above, and the inferior is below. And the reason that's important is that the terminal mouth is kind of an all-purpose mouth, and it helps with pretty much going after prey that is anywhere within the water column. The superior mouth, you can tell that this organism is going to go hunt for things that are above, maybe on the surface, flies or bugs that are sitting on the surface, and the inferior is going to be a bottom feeder, things that were an organism that looks for things that are on the seafloor. Now going on to tails, we have the heterocircle tail, and we learned about the heterocircle tail when we were talking about sharks. You can see how this top portion is longer, and it provides a lot of lift. The protocircle is this one right here. Homo circle means same, homo, same on top and bottom, and the difissor circle is this one right here, and they each have different benefits. So the hetero circle is agility and lift, the proto circle is the first tail, homo circle is for swimming fast and for long distances, and the difissor circle is for quick maneuvering. So tunas have a homo circle tail to cover long distances. Next, getting into hermaphrodites, this is kind of a quick summary page of what we're going to be discussing. So there are simultaneous hermaphrodites and sequential hermaphrodites, and within sequential hermaphrodites there are protandry and protogeny, and we'll discuss that a little more just now. So simultaneous hermaphrodites means that they are both male and female at the same time, and this is only in the case of fishes, in that you can have male and female working parts at the same time. So for most mammals, this isn't usually the case when we discuss hermaphrodites. This is more seen as a genetic problem that occurs. A hermaphrodite in a mammal usually leads to both parts being sterile, whereas in the case of fishes, you have both male and female working parts. So this means both sexes at the same time. The main advantage is that it can mate with any individual, often in fish with low population densities. Next, we have sequential, which means in order or one after the other. So one sex changes into the other, and this can happen in two different ways. So let's look at this word androgynous. So androgynous means having both male and female characteristics. So if we look at male, andro. So proto also means first. So proto means first, and we put proto and andro. So this protandry, this means male first, then female. All right. So male first, then female. And so the clownfish are an example of protandry. They are born male first, and then they change to female. So this is known as being protogynous. So it means female first. So protogynous means that it is a female first and then male. An example of this would be a rhasis. So protogynous. So now let's look at hermaphrodites again. So hermaphrodite again means both male and female in fishes. So simultaneous hermaphrodite means that you have both male and female working parts at the same time. And then sequential hermaphrodite means that there is first one, then the other. And you can further break that down into protogeny, which means it's first female, and then protandry, which means it's first a male. All right, next we're going to be talking about salmon, specifically only Pacific salmon, because there are lots of different species of salmon. So let's run through these really quick. There are sockeye, chum, coastal cutthroat, trout, coho, chinook, steelhead, and pink. And really, the point of all this is just to kind of get an idea of just the diversity of all the types of salmon. So there's large, the largest are the Pacific salmon are the king and the chinook. The medium-sized ones are the chum or dog salmon. Another set of medium-sized salmon are the coho and silver. And another thing I wanted you guys to notice in the previous pictures was this hooked nose. So scientific names for a lot of these are oncorhynchus, and that was one of our prefixes, suffixes, and roots. Onco means hook, and rhynchus means nose. Rhynch means nose, so hook nose, and that's where they get that name. Pink or humpy, and these are part of the smallest, so pink because pink, and humpy, well, humpy. Lastly, we have sockeye or red, and these are the most popular ones. Usually when we think of salmon, we think of sockeye. When we see those scarlet colored sockeye when they come up the river to spawn, and this really is really unique because it happens because they begin to digest their own skin. They spend many weeks traveling up and exert themselves very much to spawn, and in doing that they don't eat, they're starving, and their body begins to consume its skin. So now we're going to talk about the life cycle of salmon. we're going to start off with the eggs. So that's the very first one. So salmon eggs. The number of eggs produced by a female pink salmon can range from 800 to over 2,000 depending on the size of the fish. The eggs are deposited in a series of gravel nests called redds. The female makes a redd by swishing her tail in the water and moving the sediment and fine gravel and create a depression in the stream bed. So up to 85% of the eggs can be lost before hatching. Low oxygen levels, freezing, water pollution, and predation by fish, insects, and birds are all threats at this stage. Excess sediments in the water also extremely detrimental and they can smother eggs or cover the redd, trapping the fish inside. The next stage is the 11. So in the 11 stage, a newly hatched salmon is called an 11. At this stage, it looks like a thread with eyes and has a yolk sac which provides all the nutrient for the fish through the winter. An 11 must have cold, clear, oxygen-rich water to remain healthy. Excessive sediments in the water is one of the greatest dangers of salmon at this stage. It can smother newly hatched fish or cover the top of the redd, trapping the 11 inside. Aquatic insects and other fish are the primary predators of 11. Next is the fry stage. Big eyes and small stomach is a key here. Pink salmon fry begin to move downstream to the sea almost as soon as they emerge from the gravel. The tiny fish hide in stream gravels during the day and travel at night. This journey may take a day. For fish that hatched in coastal streams, fry stay in coastal estuaries for about a month. So estuaries are where you can have that brackish water before beginning to move offshore. Many fry are taken by birds, fish, and other animals during this period. The parf stage. Small fish with markings are several months old at this point. Next you have the smolt. So the smolt stage, many physical changes occur in a young salmon to help it make the transition from freshwater to saltwater stage. One of the primary changes occurs in the gills and kidneys as they change so that they can process salt water. The young fish remain in estuaries and tidal creeks for several months, feeding on plankton and larval tunicates. They gradually move into deeper, saltier water but remain near shore. Next, you have the adult in the ocean salmon. So salmon in the ocean are bright silver, like in the picture. So pink salmon spend about 18 months in salt water as they grow larger. Their diet begins to include small fish as well as various types of plankton. Adult Alaskan pink salmon can be found in most of the Northeast Pacific, ranging from the Bering Sea out to the Aleutian Chain and as far as south as the California coast. So adult salmon in freshwater, they change color, they get flattened, and they get big nasty teeth, and they get those hooked noses. Like I mentioned earlier, like the sockeye, they turn red because they begin to digest their skin. So the spawning stage, pink salmon reach sexual maturity at 2 years of age, so they begin to return to spawn anytime from June to late September, depending on the location and distance from saltwater. Pink salmon have a weaker homing instinct than other salmon species and often stray far from their natal stream to spawn. So the male salmon guards the female from other males while she rapidly pumps her tail to wash out a depression in the stream gravels. As she deposits her eggs, they are fertilized by the male. The female salmon then moves directly upstream and uses the same tail movements to dig again and cover her eggs. So salmon are born in fresh water. They move out to the ocean for a few years and then return to the same stream or lake they came from. And this is usually, like mentioned, the pink don't have a very good homing instinct. So they all look a little different when they are juveniles, and you can see all the different ones, how they can have different markings in that par stage. So they return at different times too, and that's really so that they can use some of the same areas. So they come in kind of so that they're not getting in each other's ways. Kind of notice how the month scale is up here, and you have different species coming in at different times, kind of using those same waterways. So the run size is how many fish return, and some are caught by fishermen. So you can see here the run size versus the escapement. And we'll talk about what escapement is, and that's how many fish return to spawn, or these are the ones that make it home basically. Notice the most recent information for 2002, you have about 50%. So you can see that there were almost 3,500,000 that were released by these fisheries, and then only half made it back. So the escapement is only half of them. So the Sneddisham hatchery releases at least 20 million fish each year, less than 10% return. All right, so That is the end. We're not going to be able to cover the butterfly fish. We try to go as quickly as possible, but thanks for watching, guys. Remember that every Tuesday I upload these videos. Stay motivated to learn. At 1 p.m. I will be having office hours through Zoom if anyone needs help with Edgenuity. Next week we're covering marine sport fish of Texas, mercury and fish, marine food webs, and fishing. Really exciting topics for next week. Thanks for being here with me, guys. Have a good week.